So my husband is a farmer. I grew up on a farm. I married a farmer. I live on a farm. I know how to run all of the equipment. I know all the terminology. I know the processes. And so when the Bible talks so much about farming and agriculture, it resonates with me. But for the majority of society, that is so far removed from everyday common practices that even if you have an idea of what it might be like, it's not what your occupation is every day. Just like fishing is not my occupation. So somebody who works on a boat every day is going to resonate more with those parables than I would. So a couple of things to keep in mind about reaping and sowing and seasons in relation to farming. So why does God use that as a parable? So many parables, so many stories, so many correlations in the Bible is because that is how nature works. That's how the natural progression of life works. Therefore, that is going to be the case for our spiritual life and our business life too. So with farming, there's seasons. With all of nature, there are seasons. There's seasons to grow. Granted, Hope lives in Florida. Stuff grows all year round. But there's still seasons where the plant goes dormant. It requires rest. The ground needs to rest. And it doesn't mean that nothing's happening, but it might look that way. There's not constant production. There is an ebb and a flow of those seasons of planting and harvesting and then allowing the ground to rest before the next season of planting and harvesting and cultivating that ground. So that's one thing to keep in mind. Your season might look different than somebody else's season. Somebody might be in that season of planting, of doing a lot of things, and they're not seeing the harvest yet. Somebody else might already be enjoying that harvest because they already planted, cultivated, waited for it to grow, did all the inputs, and now they're seeing a flourishing harvest. You might just be getting started. You might just be getting your ground ready. So you're not going to see any seeds in the ground or any plants growing for a very long time. Is anybody wrong? No. Is anybody more successful than anybody else? Well, probably. There's going to be people who are more successful, but just because you are getting your ground ready, you can't compare it to somebody in the harvest because you're going to feel like you're failing, but you just weren't there whenever they were in that season of cultivating and all of those things. So you have to know that business, just like farming, just like so many things, work in season. And just like plants, you have to respect that season because if you try to rush it, you're going to hurt your seed. You're going to hurt your plant. You're going to harvest before the crop is ripe and your yield is not going to be as good as it could be. Another thing to keep in mind, and I was mentioning this to Hope one day, when you harvest, that does not mean that you're getting paid right then. Sometimes I think we think harvest, awesome, payday, here we go. But actually in the farming culture, harvest does not equal payday. You then have to market the grain and sometimes you have to let it sit until the markets are right. And then you can get your payday and you can get your return on the investment. So even if you're harvesting, even if things are starting to happen in that regard, it may not be monetary. You may not get paid until later in the season. So keep that in mind too as you are growing your business, that seasons are different. You can't compare your season with somebody else's season, and harvesting doesn't always mean that the profit is starting to pour in.